Hi, I'm Daniel.
I'm Mo.
And together we are discussing customer engagement innovations in the pharma industry. You may have seen some videos about pharma fads and our bipolar customer engagement model. Find links for that separately to look at that content. But essentially what Mo and I are thinking is that the entire industry is struggling with implementing customer engagement innovations, digital, omnichannel, empowered roles in sales, medical, marketing, data integration, personalization. We're all struggling with that. Nobody's really good at it.
And that cannot be a failure of execution. It cannot be that 30-something top pharma companies, hundreds of executives, nobody can figure this out. It just cannot be. It must be that there's some fundamental piece of the puzzle that is missing.
So when we were digging into that, and we're jumping now a bit, quickly through this, we linked the white paper where you can read a little bit more in depth, right? But we want to keep this a free-flowing discussion. So when we dug a little bit deeper into that, we think that, as always, it helps to think customer backwards, right? And so we think there are essentially two fundamentally different kind of customer types that we service in the pharma industries. It's kind of two poles at the end of a spectrum, hence the name, the bipolar customer engagement model.
So on the one side, you have individual HCPs, right? Big groups of people, imagine GPs, cardiologists, in the offices or in the hospital settings, doesn't matter. And you have big groups of people where their needs are all about engagement. They want to get themselves educated. They want to be up to date about the latest innovation and R&D in pharmaceutical industry. And they want the best for their patients. They want to be able to provide the best optimal treatment for their patients.
So as a pharma industry, we need a strategy to service them. And the strategy here is, you've guessed it, we all know it, this is kind of the traditional model. It's a prescriber, we want to engage them, we want to move the prescriber along the adoption ladder. They prescribe the product, the patient takes it, we are more successful. We call that the engagement-driven go-to-market strategy, because what we're looking for, what we're really trying to achieve as the pharma industry is to engage. If we have optimal quantity and high quality engagement with these customers, then we're going to be more successful.
All right, now come to the other side. You have institutional customers. You have big hospitals, maybe some thought leaders, customers that are strategically extremely important to the success of our business, to the pharma business, to a brand.
Their businesses themselves, right? They like to improve health outcomes, but at the same time, they probably won't say that openly, but they need to optimize their business as well. They need to optimize processes. They need to position themselves in the mass market as the differentiating. They compete with other healthcare institutions.
So what do we want from these guys? We want to be close to them. We want really to create partnership. Hence, we call this side the partnership-driven strategy.
You can engage them, and you need to, but that's not going to win the game, right? You need to go beyond engagement. You need to have true partnership and find the win-win between their strategy and their sort of health and business up to health outcomes and business outcomes, and between the pharma industry, the pharma companies' business outcomes, and you need to optimize the value between that.
Now let's be real. This is also not a revolutionary thought. We have also had this in the past under names like key account management, right? We also try to do that. But on both sides, there are two fundamental questions. Number one is, how do we improve them in a focused way? And number two is, do we have to actually improve both of them? Do we actually need both? There are some companies right now who are really trying to argue that you need one of them. You only need partnership. You only need to double down and bring everybody to a level where you create win-win, no matter who the customer is. Or all you need is a very, very good omnichannel strategy.
So what we're saying as sort of as an answer to that is you actually need to focus. As a large pharma company, you probably need both, right? You need both go-to-market strategies, but you don't need both for every brand, right? So I think we believe that the more you lean into the one or the other side, the more clear you are in your strategy, in your customer engagement strategy, in your customer engagement model to embrace either engagement or partnership for a particular brand, or let's say for a particular business unit, then you will be more successful. How to choose that, by the way, we're not going to go into it. We have in the paper 4 factors which you go through to determine, is my business more E-driven, engagement-driven, or is my business more partnership-driven?
Okay. Somebody might ask, do you not need omnichannel as an overarching thing? Do you not need it for all of the customers anyway, regardless of doing partnership and projects with them?
And then here's the first fad, because then at the same time people are saying omnichannel is dead and now it's somehow opti-channel or something else. So this is where this links back to the original challenge that we've laid out also in our other posts and in the white paper. What about the innovations and why many of them don't work and they become kind of fads? We run after them for a few months and then, or for a few years, and then they don't work. Omnichannel is one of them. I would argue, and this is a bit controversial, Mo, I would argue that omnichannel is basically engagement driven. You need, on the engagement driven businesses, you need an omnichannel model. You need to, campaigns become important. And we would argue, I think, on the engagement-driven side, the campaign, the omni-channel, or I call it opti-channel campaign, is the center of, it forms the center around which all your engagement is basically determined, right? It's the campaign that's at the center that determines the channels, the content, the frequency, and the segmentation, and the kind of who is being contacted. Mm-hmm. So that would be on the engagement side. On the partnership side, arguably you may not need omnichannel, dare I say.
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into this. Why do we believe that? I mean, part of the reason it may be obvious is because you are using a tool for everybody, for all sorts of customers. You may not have the same level of return on investment, for example. But for something like omnichannel, you build a campaign and the personalization happens in the machine, in the clouds. What are you really investing once you have it up and running? So somebody might still say, you know what, I will do my partnership for sure. Your key account management, point taken, and I will try to do a better job. But can I not just do as like basis also on top omnichannel?
I mean, you could. If you do it as a basis in the background, the question really becomes, how do you set up your organization, right? This goes back to one of the points we're making is that if we want to implement this stuff is complicated, right? Shit's complicated. And you need to know when you implement, what am I focusing my organization around, right? What am I designing my roles, my processes around? What am I focusing on to upskill my people? And on the E side, we think omnichannel, opti-channel is a good way to go, tools, technology, digital, that you need to integrate, and that's how you need to focus your organization around. On the partnership side, omnichannel is kind of if you have it, it's good. It's a nice to have. It's probably not mission critical.
I think there's also 2 more points here, Daniel, that it's worth highlighting. One is, how low is the ROI where you actually say this is not impactful, this becomes a nuisance for the customer? At what point do you stop becoming impactful and your return on investment is actually negative? Not in the sense of this brings nothing, but you actually lose something. Because the emails that we send and the educational pieces that get to the customers, if they do, it just creates a bad taste in their mouth rather than actually creating something positive.
Right. I mean, that's one of the dangers. Yeah, you have.
Go to a hospital and talk to any of the administrative guys, and they will all tell you that the emails coming from the industry, they're all pre-checked and go through filters almost never reaches the audience that it's supposed to. Whether that's automatically happening through software or that's happening through assistance, it is never meeting the eyes of the real customer that it is intended for. And then at some point you have to ask yourself, well, why am I creating a spams while in reality there's nothing coming back except for customer has to create filters and softwares to block me out.
Correct. And I mean, so that basically just, I guess, to wrap up this idea a little bit, it is that Omnichannel is really something you do for an engagement-driven business. It may be a nice to have on a partnership-driven business. To Mo's point just now, you might even want to be careful about doing that because you might actually hinder or create a bit more friction than you actually want. When really what you want on the partnership side is to sit with a customer like this and discuss strategy and discuss shared value, right? Discuss patient pathways, discuss how to make the clinic's business more smooth and the optimize the treatment, the patient treatment, and how to do that in a way that both sides invest, but both sides also get a value out of it. So that's the other discussion. So that gets us to maybe the next fad is there is this fad out there where people keep asking, are sales reps a channel or are they an orchestrator? You know, is it all is the sales rep at the center of everything, or is the sales rep just a channel, which is kind of something that was introduced when Omnichannel was brought about? That sales rep was just another channel, it was kind of in a list with other things. So again, nobody has ever really found an answer to this. You know, we think that it becomes a bit easier when you focus in, because actually on the partnership side, the customer engagement people or team in this case probably is the center of everything. They are really at the center. As we said, on the engagement-driven side, it might actually be the campaign. So to some extent, some things that the rep does may become sort of a channel. But on the partnership side, the people and the team, it's probably not only going to be a sales rep, to be honest. You know, there's going to be a team there, is at the center of the model.
I mean, around sales reps, there are a couple of these fads, right? So we have heard this now multiple times. Sales rep is dead, but it's not dead. MSLs are replacing reps. Aren't MSLs just reps anyway? They are also commercial. And then there is the long, never answered taboo question of what's the role of the sales rep and what are the capabilities that they need to have? What are the skills and attitude that they need to have? And I think if you look at pharma industry, it's very obvious that everybody's experimenting with this. You have experiments like calling all of the sales reps patient journey partners. You have experiments of calling all of them customer engagement specialists. And these all have very specific intentions and ideas behind them. The problem is they become very quickly a fad because they are trying to do the same thing for everybody. They're trying to just do one big scale transformation of changing the names and the roles and, you know, how we recruit. But then at the end of the day, you go at the bottom, and with every customer, you almost have a decision. Is this a customer that really needs engagement strategy, or does it need a partnership strategy? Mm-hmm. And that sort of answers that question. Do you need the rep to be the center of the campaign or not? Well, it really depends what customer you are talking to. If you're talking to somebody where relationship, win-win is at the center, then yeah, you should be the center.
Correct. And actually not maybe a single person, but actually a team should be at the center for sure. Yeah.
The human relationship is the most important.
Absolutely.
When it comes to creating win-wins, because it's all about values. But if you have an engagement strategy where you are trying to reach a lot more customers, you're trying to bring them into peer-to-peer discussions, you're trying to bring them along the adoption ladder, then of course campaign has to sort of like call the shots. Then role of a rep completely changes from, or role of that team completely changes from creating those win-wins to actually just optimizing the engagement.
Let's dive a bit deeper into the sort of the human element on the partnership side. We actually think that here we need to embrace the agile project management. So set up agile teams. We think that on the partnership side, where it's all about collaboration, co-creation with the customer, finding win-win, a key element is that for these truly very important customers, right? This is for businesses where you might have 5 or 6 or maybe 10 centers in a country determining all your success, because highly specialized disease states, quite few small patient populations. We're talking kind of rare disease areas as well. I think there you probably have a whole bunch of people calling on one particular customer, right? You'll probably have a sales rep, you have one or several medical people, you have somebody even from clinical trials calling on this or working with that institution. You might have in many countries field access persons, and you probably, if there are a few centers, they might buy directly from you, so you might actually have customer service. And then you might want to actually, if you find value solutions to implement, you might need sort of a scrum master or a project manager to work with that customer to actually implement a change in the organization. So very quickly you have a team, and in the past we have found that, you know, there were silos, and these teams didn't know of each other, and they were not coordinated calling on a customer. And basically that needs to basically be transformed, because that becomes the center. That agile customer team becomes the center. You have all the skills and roles in that team that is needed to service the customer at the best possible level.
An example that I like a lot that you and I faced was in the UK. When you actually go to these big hospital groups, there are 2 things that immediately as customer feedback you can feel it as a struggle. The number one is there's just too many people to talk to. Like when a hospital wants to actually reach out to a pharma company, there's just too many people, and the internal struggle that they have to align everybody is just way too big. Ideas are created, of course, but from idea to the market, it takes way too long.
Correct.
Because we are set up based on brands and based on functions. We are not set up by customer. That's one. And the second thing is, of course, we have teams right now, cross-functional teams, and they work very well together, but they are not empowered. They have on the ground very little decision-making power outside of their little bubble. Right? Every person's manager is trying to empower them, but the manager doesn't have a lot of power either. So what happens is every time we have to go through the chain of command to be able to do something, because guess what? A big institutional customer is never going to ask a pharma company for small things that fit inside the responsibilities of the small cross-functional team on the ground. They're always going to think bigger.
Correct.
The good ideas are almost never fitting within the responsibilities of that small team. So here's
a something you've read as a fad, empowered agile teams, and we say, hey, it's another fad. If you try to do it everywhere, you probably it fits with the customer team that you need on the partnership side to create success. And we haven't really done that in the past very well, right? We're really operating with customers in silos.
I think we try to, as much as possible, create cross-functional teams. The problem is the setup of the cross-functional teams are always coming from the functions. And what we are suggesting is we should start with somebody who can actually take the responsibility of building the team based on what the customer wants. If you have a customer where they need a call center, then you need to bring somebody who knows how to do that. That may not be the case for every other customer. So not every team needs somebody who can build a call center. Yeah? If you need somebody in a team who is helping the customer with, a finance topic, then you need a finance guy in the team. But that may not mean that in every cross-functional team for every customer, you need a finance guy. This principle applies to any function. Yeah? So if the customer needs it,
a little bit partnership side really focused around the team, agile principles applied, and really it is building from the ground up. It is building empowered agile teams from the ground up, from the customer backwards, and it is for a very small group of customers, right? This is, what we describe is very hard. It costs a lot of money, right? I mean, you put an agile team in place that for a good part of their day are working for one customer. This is going to be very expensive. So you can only do this for your really top 3, 5, 7 customers in a country, and you really can only do this for businesses, for brands and for business units where your success is determined by a very small group of customers. We see the industry going this way. That's why we think key account management is no longer good enough. We need to lean and really dial key account management up into partnership-driven go-to-market models and go-to-market strategies, like we have just described. Because in rare diseases, you will be having 5, 6 customers that determine your success, and all your investment will have to go into that.
There are a couple of trends that are actually making this very mainstream these days. One of them is rare diseases. So pharma is going in that direction, which means partnership is going to gain more weight compared to engagement strategies. There is also ecosystem. I think the whole environment of therapy is becoming very complex. The stakeholders that used to have a lot of power are now sharing their power in a very networked way with other stakeholders. I mean, this God in white mentality that we have towards HCPs, that they just sit there and decide based on the best information that they have, it's just not true anymore. There are protocols, there is payers as huge players, there's government mandates, there is also budgets to be managed. When you are talking about big institutions, they are running a business. We are not only talking about running a business in the sense of patient pathway optimization, we're also just talking money, budget management. All of that means if pharma wants to win, then we need to become a part of that ecosystem and think like that, as opposed to we just bring a product and buy it or you don't buy it. We have to accept that there are consequences to it, and we are a part of those consequences. The second thing that we see is how interconnected all of these topics are becoming. Because it used to be that we find leverage points along a patient pathway. Now, most of the time, the decisions are not made necessarily inside those leverage points, but like interconnected in many other places. As this becomes very popular, it becomes very common, then you cannot just rely on those points for decision making. You have to think more holistically. And to do that, the only way to do it is just, if you get close to those businesses.
And that's where partnership comes in. And you can't solve that sort of interconnect is that system thinking, that ecosystem challenge. You cannot really solve it well with an engagement-driven strategy where you just engage and persuade single people. That doesn't really
just
work.
Look at Europe and how consolidated over the past 10 years the hospital environment has become. Right? 10, 20 years ago, we barely had big hospital groups. Now in France, in Germany, in UK, they are more or less dominating the market. Where everywhere you go, you have hospitals as part of groups, and they are not inactive. They are very active in setting protocols. They are very active in directly managing their affiliates. And they have negotiating power. So partnership is just nature of pharma business now.
Let's go to another fad. The ever-lasting discussion between marketing and medical, right? Where 15 years ago we have finally realized that, you know, pharma industry is all about science. It's all about explaining the science behind the product. Shocking. And so we introduced medical sort of in the field with medical scientific liaison managers, MSLs, and I think highly successful, to be honest. And we are both commercial guys, but difficult to admit. But I think for a number of businesses, this has really made a difference and it has really driven success. To the extent that then for some businesses we said we maybe just need MSLs, right? So that is the one side. The other side is that now sometimes people have been asking, yeah, but isn't medical then ultimately a commercial function, right? Shouldn't we all go for the same objectives? You know, we've built teams and we set one objective, but then we can't because medical cannot have a sales objective, and so they're never-ending discussions.
Yes, and the P&L separation and the whole compliance aspect of this is also putting more gasoline to the fire of how is this supposed to work? Like what exactly is the operating model? I think, again, the bipolar model probably helped a little bit here because it really clarifies what is the role of medical function in the whole strategy of pharma.
So let me make another controversial statement, right? Just like as I said that honestly you may not need omnichannel on the partnership side, you might just need it on the engagement side. I could now basically make the sort of little bit controversial argument the other way around to say, in the partnership model, do we need still like sales reps, traditional ones? Maybe we just need medical people. Maybe we just need scientifically highly trained specialists that are talking to the customer because there is not much of a commercial marketing kind of discussion to be had. We're both commercial guys, might hurt us a little bit, but honestly, I can totally sign on to that argument. As you earlier said, the teams that work with the P customers should be determined by the needs of the customer. If the customer has primarily a scientific need, if it's a highly scientific product, very scientific need, it's all about data and getting, you know, identifying patients and so on and so forth, there might not be the need for a traditional commercial sales rep kind of person in that particular team.
A company that is selling any commodity or product in big scale probably has this in the back of their mind. They have, most of them, a B2B and a B2C model. In the B2C model, they may need big campaigns and they may need sales reps, salespersons. But on the B2B, it's a very different model and it's a very different way of selling. So do you need still somebody who sells? Yes, of course. But that's very different kind of selling. You are not really going there with messages and repeating. The funny example that I can give is if Coca-Cola is selling me a drink, they better do, you know, social media campaigns and TikToks and whatever. But if they're selling to a wholesaler, none of that is going to matter. They need a customer base because, you know, they are trying to sell to that institution, of course. But the TikTok video of a Coca-Cola and somebody dancing behind it is not the thing that convinces the wholesaler to buy more.
Correct.
It's something fundamentally different. So better send somebody who can speak that language.
Correct.
In that, if you are talking to an R&D driven institution, you better bring somebody who can talk.
Absolutely. Of science and R&D. Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally right. Then, you know, just with a quick comment, what is then the role of medical on the engagement side? Well, you know, it is basically the role medical needs to take as determined by the campaign. So I think in a more traditional sense, if we apply sort of the normal campaign and omnichannel model, then medical would need to be there to continuously develop good, high quality content, right? It's all about the content being relevant, being meaningful, being, of course, accurate. And that's where medical would have a big role there. And medical might also have a big role in sort of digital engagement, sort of media, online meetings, conferences, digital conferences, and so on, because again, people are going there for interesting content and science. It doesn't say we need the one it on the other side. The roles become different. So one consequence, for example, let's now stick with the marketing medical topic, is if I have a engagement driven brand or business, I'm setting up my brand team with different skills, right? Marketing has to have certain skills, digital skills. Marketing and medical have to work together. They have to have both digital skills. They have to have both sort of maybe social media skills. They have to think about how to, do pull and push marketing and so on and so forth. Marketing and medical will have a very different role on the partnership side, right? Medical might take actually pretty much a back seat, because in the end, it's about the needs of the customers and it's about the science. Marketing might come in when we're brainstorming with the customer around creative value solutions we can together develop. So that's where the bipolar model helps, because the way you design and recruit and upskill for your medical and marketing colleagues on the E side would be very different than you do it on the P side. And that clarity helps, because you recruit the right people, you give them the right empowerment, you give them the right skills, you incentivize them in a different and in the right way to actually serve the challenge and the strategy that you need.
Okay, I know this part is going to be controversial. It's controversy alert already, because this is exactly where we faced, you and I, two big questions. One is, you hinted at it, incentive. Because as soon as we start talking about agile teams and who leads them is the one that is needed most by the customer, the question of, well, how do you incentivize somebody, especially if they come from a medical function, while not being able to own P&L responsibilities? Separation of church and state.
Correct.
Is extremely necessary. And then the second question is the R lines. Because you're going to have somebody leading that agile team. As much as we all believe in non-hierarchical teams, somebody's going to have to orchestrate everything. And that person could come from any of those functions, depending on what the customer wants. And if that comes from a commercial side, typically there is less controversy, but as soon as that comes from somewhere else, it starts to become a little bit strange how the whole system is working, right? So how do you see that?
So let's go with incentives, right?
Yeah.
On the E side, again, we said the campaign is at the center of everything. Incentives should be linked to the campaign parameters and the KPIs. That's a whole different discussion, podcast and white paper probably, about what are the right omnichannel KPIs. And I think we can certainly have a discussion about that. There is also plenty of other people and content around that topic. But again, the E side is driven, everything centers, everything is determined by the campaign, also the incentive structure. On the P side, we've developed the idea of a customer P&L, right? Today, what a lot of pharma companies cannot do, as opposed to, for example, most B2B companies, is to know how much money do I make from turnover, revenue do I make with a particular customer, and what's my cost to service that customer. And then from that, basically have a rough customer P&L. We can't do this in the pharma industry because we're not set up that way, and also because mainly we have P&Ls sort of in nice product silos. So oftentimes we don't know that.
It's because we don't want to. I mean, in all reality, ask any of your data analysts. They look at IQVIA data. Can they not create a little rough idea? I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but a rough idea of what do we spend in that brick and how much sales is coming out of it. Is it 1-to-1, 100% perfect? No. But what is? In pharma industry, nothing is 100%.
I mean, the challenge you would probably have is this. But again, I think there is ways to jump over that shadow. Is on the P side, can you, if you have in your agile team scientific functions, medical functions, can you incentivize them by a full P&L based on revenue and so on? There are then, of course, proxies that one can use, like patient numbers and so on and so forth. So those are the ways to incentivize. And I think it's similar is the R-line discussion, right? The P&E approach allows you to determine that based on the customer and based on the respective strategy you need, right? So on the partnership side, the person leading the Agile team is the one that probably is most capable and that is most critical and knowledgeable about that customer and can really own that relationship with the customer. We call this sort of a little customer CEO, right, kind of thing. And on the E side, as said, outline is probably less critical because it's all determined by the campaign and who leads the campaign team and who is most useful for that would determine that.
It needs a little bit of innovative thinking, right? Like it needs to be a little bit more fluid organizational setup, but there are ways around these things.
Correct. So to wrap up this a little bit, so we will expand a little bit more in other podcasts, but we believe that there are these two poles, and the more you lean into the one or the other side, again, life's not perfect, there's always shades of gray, but the more you lean with your brand or your business unit to design your organization, your roles, your skills, your teams, your processes to serve either an engagement-driven strategy or a partnership-driven strategy, the more successful you'll be in your execution.